understand, all of us that volunteer to do this, understand why we do it, which is for our students, right? So on the back of your program are a list of folks that have supported the APRON, the college, the Office of Student Life Office, Foundation have all given monetarily, and then other groups have certainly supported this endeavor. The APRON committee is listed inside, where is it? Page 32, and you'll see a whole list of a bunch of people that did a lot of small things and a lot of big things to make today happen. Things like putting the program together or moderating sessions or all kinds of different things. And we really appreciate their work. And the other group that I want to pull out are the mentors. So the students that are presenting didn't just come up with a project out of nowhere with no guidance. There was certainly guidance in the process of putting it together and getting it to the point where it is today. So if you're one of those folks, please stand up so we can give you a round of applause. Cool. There's one other thank you that I think we should do that really comes from the beginnings of APRON. Back in, the first APRON was 2003. Before that, there was a student research forum, which was kind of based on research projects and those kind of things. Well, the college got a dean in about 2002, was it? Who had this idea that perhaps there's some other things besides research that should be presented. Creative areas, performing arts, scholarship that's not just working in a chemistry lab, even though I think that's awesome, but okay. It was during that year that this forum got this new name, which I still can't pronounce properly. I call it APRON. I hope that's close enough. I just know how to spell it, which is ape iron. Okay? But the idea was it's a broader vision for what scholarship, creativity, research, what that really means, and how that's really the heart of our mission as the university, the heart of the vision of this university. So, and Gordon McQuarrie was really the center of that. Gordon, just as a question, is this what you envisioned back in 2002?
Yes, exactly.
Exactly. Wonderful, wonderful. So, I think we should thank you on behalf of our students, on behalf of supporting this forum, which really helps to enlighten that intellectual part of our culture, part of our university, part of the community. In a lot of ways, APRON will be your legacy. So thank you. Okay, so my part's done. Regina Castle's going to come up and make a presentation, and when she's done, then Barry Crawford will come up and introduce Dr. Nobo, which is why you're really here. So thank you.
Hi everyone. Every year we try to promote APRON, and we still have some people that don't know what it is quite, but every year more and more students do know. And so students in one of my classes all create posters, and so this year we had two, and I'm sure you saw them up on the hallways, and the cover of the program was actually created by a mass media student named Morgan McGrath. And she, I don't think, made it because she was hoping she could get off work, but she wasn't sure. But the first poster that the committee selected was by Patricia Peterson, and she is here today. So we want to present her with a framed copy of it and just recognize her for her design work.
Oh, okay. Oh, yes, here.
Well, it is my distinct honor and pleasure today to introduce to you Professor Jorge Nobo, who is going to deliver the last lecture. And I really hope it's not. Professor Nobo joined Washburn's philosophy department in 1972 and taught here for almost 40 years until he retired in 2011. He was born in Havana, Cuba, and he came to the United States as a child, stayed here for about 3 years, and then returned to Cuba, where he finished his secondary education, and then came back to the United States in 1960. In 1966, he became a naturalized citizen and received his bachelor's degree from the University of Miami in Coral Gables. In that same year, he began his graduate studies at the University of Texas, where he would eventually meet his wife-to-be, Pat. And he received his Ph.D. in philosophy in 1973. Dr. Nobo is one of the world's leading experts on one of the world's most difficult philosophers to understand. We sometimes kid him in the philosophy department, or at least I kid him, that he chose Alfred North Whitehead because then no one would know if he's doing it right. He is the author of Whitehead's Metaphysics of Extension and Solidarity. He's co-editor of The Individual and Society, published by the Southwestern Journal of Philosophy Press. His articles on metaphysics and process philosophy have appeared in various books and journals, professional journals, or have been presented to various professional societies. He's been a visiting scholar at the University of Salamanca and Harvard, and a participant in 2 National Endowment for the Humanities Institutes. And he's currently working on a book on experience and reality. And it's my very great pleasure at this time to present him to you.
We may have a conflict between 2 speakers, so I think I'm going to have to wing it. Can you hear me in the back? No.
I can turn this one off.
Yeah, turn that one off. No.
Now let's try it.
Okay, now can you hear? High tech.
I turned it off. How? Off.
Can you save us? Here we go.
Is it up here?
Here we go again. Is that better?
We can all compress.
Move forward.
Move up.
Yeah, move up.
Listen, a shorter introduction might have been, look what the cat dragged in. As to my expertise, a student once told me that I was smarter than Einstein. I asked, why do you say that? Well, supposedly only a few people understand Einstein, but nobody understands you. I think the topic of my lecture, Science and Belief, is germane to the spirit of apeiron. But frankly, I was motivated to adopt it, the topic, because I'm kind of upset with the anti-science and anti-education stances taken in some political and religious circles. So that's one motivation for what I'm doing. And I'm losing my voice already. That's a problem. I'll work on it. I think those stances endanger not only the goal of public education, but the very concept of a liberal arts education. They also endanger the planet, life in general, humanity in particular. Thinking about the motivation behind those stances, I was reminded of an article. This is my slide over here. An article by Charles Sanders Peirce, pronounced Peirce, titled "The Fixation of Belief." And it seemed to me that it was very relevant to what's going on right now in our country. So I decided to adopt that and plagiarize him a bit and communicate to you some of the ideas that I think are relevant today. I first read the article, The Fixation of Belief, in the summer of 1966. I had just finished my undergraduate studies. And maybe we should have left this on. Maybe we try.
Sean has the mic.
Right.
Is this better now?
Yeah.
Picking up something.
Better get my papers. The suspense is building, I can tell. That's good. Like I said, I first read the article in the summer of '66, and having just finished my undergraduate education, and immediately put into very lucid perspective my entire education up to that point. It also helped to. Oh, I can want to go. Thank you very much. And later on, it also helped me to put into perspective my graduate studies and even my teaching.
It's picking up somebody else.
There's hope.
Sorry about this. We did check it out earlier, I promise.
Anyway, I would like to share with you some of these ideas that I got from that first, and some of my own. Okay. Now, a little bit about Peirce. He's a renowned American philosopher, logician, scientist, and mathematician. His father was the renowned mathematician, astronomer, and Harvard teacher, Benjamin Peirce. He was greatly influenced by his father and became a mathematician of note and also a scientist of note. He graduated from Harvard in 1859, and in 1860 he entered the Lawrence Scientific School at Harvard. He took his master in 62, and a year later was the first person to graduate from Harvard. To graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree. He studied chemistry. Where's Sean? He studied chemistry. He was a student of chemistry. First was. Now what do I do with that? What do I do with it? Just walk around?
Talking to it.
Talking.
Yes, sir.
Keep it close to your mouth.
That's better.
Sorry about that.
Unlike his father, who had was tenure at Harvard for 49 years, Peirce never was able to obtain a permanent teaching position. As a result, his influence really came later through in his own day, his influence was through correspondence, personal contact, vocational lectures, and so forth. But as a result, his voluminous writings were not published until after his death. Very few articles were published. The one I'm basing my lecture on was published in Popular Science Monthly, but don't let that fool you. That was a very good journal back then. And it was part of a series of articles on the logic of discovery, scientific discovery, I'm sorry, or the logic of science, to put it best. And it seems to me that he had something to say about science that's relevant today, as well as other methods of fixing belief. And you'll see why. In any case, in the fixation of belief, some of the key ideas are, first of all, the association of belief and habit. I'm getting busy because I'm read these up. For Peirce, every belief is associated with a habit of action. If you believe something, you're prepared to act in certain specifiable ways, under specifiable circumstances, with specifiable expectations. And so long as you believe that, as long as you have that belief, you're ready to act without hesitation. It's a very comfortable state of mind to be in. But there's also doubt. The opposite of belief for Peirce was not disbelief, because that's just another belief. You know, if you believe that P is true, and then somebody disbelieves that P is true, that means he believes that P is false. Just another belief. But doubt is something else. It's a practical opposite of belief. Because when you doubt, you're not sure of how to act. You're not sure what to expect when you act. If I know that a certain bridge is safe, I can drive over it without giving it a second thought. And if I think it's not safe, then I just won't drive over it. But if I'm not sure, then, boy, I'm in a hurry today. Maybe I should take the bridge. Then again, maybe I shouldn't. You know, I'm not sure what to do. That's doubt. And doubt is irritating. It's an uncomfortable state of being. So, given that that's the case, we try to find a way of doing away with doubt and establishing belief. And that's what he meant by inquiry. His theory of inquiry is a little bit questionable. And what he says about doubt and so on is true. But surely some inquiry is motivated by curiosity and not doubt. Okay. But that's not going to affect the import of what I'm emphasizing. Okay. So inquiry is a struggle to do away with doubt and establish belief. According to Peirce, there are four basic methods of fixing or establishing belief or settling belief. You're trouble with my slide? I cannot get it any bigger. The method of tenacity, number one. The method of authority, number two. The a priori method, which is pretty much limited to to philosophy. And the method of science. Guess which one he favors? Science. Okay, tenacity. Once we have a belief, we have a tendency to stick to it, no matter what may count against it. At least we avoid acknowledging what undermines that belief. We gravitate towards that which would support it in some way. And even when the facts pile up against it, there are individuals who still tenaciously hold to the belief. Not everybody, obviously not. You know, people sometimes are persuaded by the facts, by arguments, by new experiences that their belief is wrong, and give it up in favor of some other belief. Okay. But certainly there are people who, no matter what the evidence is, they're just not going to change their mind. Some of it is not harmful. For example, I've been holding the belief that the Royals are going to win the division this year, and every year I say that, and every year I'm wrong. But that doesn't hurt anybody but me. But on the other hand, think of a drug addict, or an alcoholic, or someone addicted to gambling. The addiction is ruining their lives, but they insist, I can quit anytime. This time I'm going to win the bet, or what have you. And it can destroy lives. So obviously it's not a good thing to hold on tenaciously to any number of beliefs. And think also of racial prejudice or sexual prejudice and so forth. People suffer because of your tenaciously adhering to a belief that's not justified. Am I still doing all right in the back? I'm surprised. So clearly that's not a very good method of fixing belief. And Peirce says that the social impulse works against it. We meet other people who have beliefs that are contrary to ours, and we begin to doubt. I think also exposure to relevant facts also undermines beliefs based on tenacity, or maintained by tenacity. The next method, the method of authority, is supposed to remedy the weakness of the method of tenacity. How so? Because you try to fix belief for the community rather than by the individual. And you do it by means of some authority, which can be a dictator, a sacred book, political party, church, synagogue, what have you. These are institutions, however you want to construe institution. One individual, community of individuals, or a book, or what have you. Fix belief for the community and enforce the belief and punish anyone who holds a contrary belief. So you wipe out the opposition, as it were, and then so long as you stay within your group, there's nothing to challenge what you believe. So there's an advantage in the method of authority for fixing belief in ways that are less likely to be undermined by meeting new people. Think about that. Think about the Catholic Church at the time of the Inquisition. Good example. Think of communism under Stalin, or Nazi Germany under Hitler. Again, this can do a great deal of harm, but it's a very effective way, historically, of fixing belief. Costly one, by the way. But even so, the social impulse at another level, more international, also undermines belief created by authority, or fixed by authority. Nation meets nation. Religion meets religion. Dictator meets dictator. Dictator meets angry mob, or angry people. Look at that Arab Spring right now, what the difference it's made. Just an encounter with other peoples, other religions, and so forth, has a liberating effect, or at least creates doubt and ultimately has a liberating effect. The method of a priori is a little questionable for a philosopher. I mean, he's criticizing philosophy in part, but the idea is that the method is somewhat like the method of authority, but without compulsion. People get together, philosophers primarily, and discuss what might be something that's fundamentally true, or considered self-evident, or at least agreeable to reason, as he puts it. And if somebody comes up with something that he or she thinks is agreeable to reason or self-evident, you start making deductions from that basic principle. The problem is that what appears to be self-evident at one time is anything but at another time. What in one society seems reasonable and acceptable, in another society may be thought unreasonable and unacceptable. And in philosophy also you find you have competing self-evident principles or statements. So that creates doubt, and it doesn't work. He actually thought that philosophy could be done in a way that does not commit that sin, that has no pretense to absolute certainty, called fallibilism. No pretense to absolute certainty or universality, but still through rational methods you come up with beliefs that are defensible until something else makes them no longer defensible. Does that make sense? I'm going to pull a Marco Rubio here. Actually, I should be over there and then lean over.
Yeah.
we come to the method of science. What is needed, said Peirce. I'm going to quote here. I haven't cracked any jokes yet. If I do, I start laughing, and then I get stitches in my chest. I'll quote what he said about this. Fine, I've gone through a lot already. It is necessary that a method should be found, this is a quotation, by which our beliefs may be determined by nothing human, but by some external permanency, by something upon which our thinking has no effect. The method must be such that anyone who uses it will obtain the same result. Such is the method of science. In some ways, the method consists in putting the question to nature and letting nature answer. I'll give you an example of that in a few minutes. Here's what he wrote about that. You start out with a surprising fact. Let's see, that's what he uses to assess the conclusion. You observe the surprising fact C. If A were true, then C would be a matter of course. Therefore, there's reason to suspect that A is true. Does that make sense? Some surprising fact really puzzles you, may undermine some of your beliefs. If A, some statement of fact, were true, then C would follow as a matter of course. That's exactly what you would expect. Therefore, you have reason to suspect that C is true. Now, that's not deduction, which if you have true premises and a valid form, will guarantee that the conclusion is true. It's not induction either in the usual sense of the word, where you have a greater probability of being right or wrong, given a list of facts that are relevant to the conclusion you reach. Okay? He called this a new method of inference. He called it abduction or retroduction. Today we call it inference to best explanation. Okay? And it's not enough that you have, in order to be a truly scientific claim or hypothesis, there must be, in addition to the fact A that's explained by, the fact C that's explained by A, additional facts. Your hypothesis or theory must have test implications. If it's true, then we should discover additional facts by observation or experiment. Clear on that? Now I want to give you an example. And I have to create a second slide, so bear with me. Sometimes around the turn of the century, not this century, I'm sorry. Sometime around the end of the 16th century and the beginning of the 17th, I don't know the exact date, somebody invented the suction pump. And then somebody came up with the idea of using the suction pump to draw water from a well. Here's where I get creative. Those are bricks. Water. That's blue. You have a tube that goes down the well all the way into the water. connected to a suction pump. And has a spout. You suck the air out of the tube, the water comes up and goes out the spout. I don't know if you heard that in the back. Didn't have this in hand. Okay. Now, this is puzzling. This is a puzzling fact. Why does the water rise up the tube? The standard answer back then, in terms of the medieval synthesis of philosophy and theology, was nature abhors a vacuum, hates it, can't stand it. So when you create a vacuum through the suction pump, water rushes in to fill it up. This is a serious explanation at the time. God creates nature. Nature is something positive. It's being, not absence of being. Vacuum would be taken to be an absence of being. Can't be. You have to rush in with water. There's a problem. Sooner or later you find out that at sea level, the water will rise up to 34 feet and no one. Now what do you say? Well, nature abhors a vacuum, but not too much. I mean, at 34 feet, it's up. You can have your vacuum. That doesn't make much sense. Well, what explains it? A fellow named Torricelli, student of Galileo, but also a scientist in his own right, pondered this surprising fact and came up with a hypothesis that the water rose due to atmospheric pressure. He knew that when you dive into the ocean, the deeper you go, the more water you have over you, exerts pressure that you can feel. Well, the atmosphere is exerting pressure on the water. By the way, this is slide 2. If you hadn't sucked the air out, there would be the same pressure here. But since you suck the air out, there's more pressure here than here, so the water rises until the column of water is equal to the pressure exerted by the atmosphere. Seems obvious, but not back then. Everybody knew back then that the 4 elements behave in certain natural ways. For example, water and earth gravitate. That is, it's in their nature to move downwards. It's in the nature of air and fire to move up. Fire, here. That's why balloons go up, for example. The air pushes up, not down, so this is stupid. This can't be true. Well, here's where you need more than theory. You need to have the ability to come up with tests, empirical tests, that are predicted by, where the outcome of the test is predicted by your hypothesis. Excuse me. Torricelli reasoned that if I'm right about this, and if instead of water we use mercury, or quicksilver, as I said back then, I wasn't there, I just read about it. If you use mercury, and mercury is 14 times heavier than water, the specific gravity of mercury is 14 times that of water. Divide 34 feet by 14, you get approximately 2.5 feet, 30 inches of mercury. So you're predicting that the column of mercury is going to be 30 inches long. Nobody's ever come up with that number before, or even thought about something like that. How do you test that? Well, you had an open container of mercury. He created a test tube that was longer than 30 inches. I think it was about 40. It's a pretty long one, but he needed it. Filled it up to the top with mercury. Put his thumb over it. Don't do this at home. Inverted it on the container and then remove his thumb from the opening. And sure enough, the column of mercury fell to approximately 30 inches. Nobody had any inkling of that. So if you're predicting that on the basis of your hypothesis and the experiment bears it out, you have good reason for thinking that it's atmospheric pressure that's causing the water to go up and the mercury to go up proportionally. Nothing that I wanted is at work here. It's nature itself determining the answer to my question. It's not because I wanted to, no, it's not because I had a certain upbringing or I'm Catholic or what have you. Anybody who does this experiment will obtain the same result. So this is a method which yields beliefs that are not based on what you like or dislike, or how you were brought up, or what have you. And it's the only method itself, he said, that's self-corrected, and the only one that can be done well or poorly, right or wrong. If you know what you're doing, you're going to get good results. You could use a different liquid. I know that mercury is not a liquid, but for the purposes of this, it is. This is the invention of the barometer, right? Incidental to the theory, it's the invention of the barometer. Well, Pascal thought, if he's right, and I take a barometer off of a mountain, the higher I go, the less the height of the column of mercury. He had two barometers. One was left at the bottom of the mountain, and the other one was taken up in steps, read at intervals that were also read at the bottom of the mountain. And sure enough, the column of mercury was shorter the more you went up. That's a pretty good example of a scientific method that works in physics. Now, physics, astronomy in particular, can make very good use of this method with this much precision. A little less so in chemistry. I'm sorry, Sean. A lot less so in biology. By the time you get to psychology and the social sciences, you really have to make adjustments. But the idea remains basic. Certain surprising facts, or certain interesting facts, need an explanation. And your hypothesis should be able to not only provide that explanation, but show that other things follow from it. And the interesting fact is exactly what you would expect if your hypothesis is true. Today, in the Aperon exhibits, you have examples of that method in use. Okay. Every discipline has methods or a method which for that discipline guarantees the best results, the more rational, reasonable beliefs, and so on. But remember, you're never going to have absolute certainty. If you want that, stick with math, geometry, and deductive logic. Not even deductive logic, statistical logic, and so forth. Now, why am I emphasizing this? I said that I was concerned with the anti-education, anti-science stance that I find in some circles. I'm not nervous. It's Parkinson. I really enjoy this, and I miss it. I don't know if this is original with John Silver, who was the chair of the philosophy department when I went to Texas, and later became the president of Boston University, and really converted it into a high-level institution. He might have been quoting somebody, but I remember him saying this. The goal of education is not to make ideas safe for students. It's to make students safe for ideas. And I'm going to elaborate on that a little bit. Merely stocking students with ideas will not do. We must teach students the most reliable methods of generating, critiquing, method of generating, critiquing, and supporting ideas, or in Peirce's terms, of generating, critiquing, and supporting beliefs. Okay? According to Peirce, we do not need to be taught to be conservative about our beliefs. We're so by nature. We're all conservatives in regards to our beliefs. But that is precisely why the goal of education is not the preservation of ideas or beliefs, but their improvement. That is also why ultra-conservatives see public education as a threat to their most cherished beliefs. What is true of education in general is even more fundamentally true of liberal arts education. As its name implies, a liberal education aims at liberating us from the ignorance, biases, and prejudices associated with all forms of narrow provincialism, including the provincialisms of craft, trade, profession, business, religion, or political party. It is necessarily an education that in one way or another challenges many of our beliefs, but one that also makes its surviving beliefs sounder or stronger. Remember here that no injustice has ever been remedied, no social wrong righted by smugly adhering to the belief that spawned that injustice or that wrong. I end with a suggestion appropriate to the goals of Washburn, that the ideas propounded by Peirce in the Fixation of Belief suggest and justify the mainstays of a liberal art education. From psychology and literature, you can learn a lot about human nature and the formation of beliefs among health nations. From sociology and history, you can learn about the method of authority and the harm it does. By the way, there are more subtle ways today of using that method, sometimes legislating, gerrymandering, and so forth. So you don't need the Inquisition. Obviously, from philosophy, you can learn deductive logic, but also how to reason in areas of value like ethics and aesthetics and so forth, so even social belief and philosophy. You can also, you obviously need to take courses in the natural sciences, because they teach you, they give you the best, clearest example of the advantages of the method of science over the other methods. And so on. I think I can quit here now. If you have questions about anything, I think we have a little bit of time, but I'm not sure. Yeah. You were going to show something at me, and you didn't. So.
I didn't. I was. What was interesting because you and I probably encountered C.S. Peirce and Alfred North Whitehead about the same time. I took several philosophy of science classes on the way through, but subsequently I went over to the dark side. So.
Whether in business you also have methods, so there's no significant difference there. There may be a surprising fact that the market went down and you don't know why, and now you have doubts about investing. There are ways of figuring out what may have gone wrong and what, and so on.
There's a recent book on the history of accounting, and they tie accounting to these things that were happening in science. That the objective, the objectively measuring what happened in business affairs, trying to measure income, trying to measure assets, and they would. This author, it's a double entry accounting, and it ties that to the whole evolution of science. It's kind of an interesting story.
Read that, right?
No, but I heard the review of it on NPR, and he was a friend of Leonardo's.
He had Leonardo illustrate his book, which I think is
Yeah. Other questions? Or comments or anything about political things?
Yeah, so then if coming into contact with surprising facts or other nations are to help create doubt, which helps maybe detach us from these ideas of certainty, which right now seem to be rather destructive in terms of education, in particular. Why then, in this time when we're running into more and more people from other places, are we not picking up on the surprising facts that?
Well, a lot of people are.
Yes.
But there's some that are so threatened by it, they want to make sure that education just teaches you to add and multiply, and that in college nobody indoctrinates you and so forth. I was switching channels the other day, well, it's a few days now, and came across Hannity, I think, complaining that claims that there's been voter suppression is propaganda created by Democrats, media, liberal media, and leftist university professors. That's quite a range of people. I think one of the things I want to do is try to understand the motivation of these people. Really, they feel that their cherished beliefs are being threatened, and they're fighting back. Not with science. They're fighting back with authority and tenacity. Maybe even a priority.
I now understand why my oldest son loved to take philosophy classes, especially with Dr. Jacobson. So I really didn't expect to be your lecture to be this interesting and educational. I can really listen to you forever. Thank you so much. I've learned so much.
Well, before we let Professor Novo go, I would like to present him with this plaque, or at least to let him hold it for a little while, on which his name is inscribed, and to show our appreciation for his last lecture from Apiron. And I would also like to announce that the Washburn Foundation, in honor of Professor Novo's lecture, is going to make a very generous contribution to a scholarship fund for students of philosophy.
By the way, I had a comment in there that I didn't use, that as an example of the changes, how this article helped me understand my education. I took a 2-semester sequence in comparative religion at the University of Miami. Wow, did that open my mind. It helped me understand the religion I was born into, but also its limitations and so forth.
Well, thanks very much for the plug. And thank you all for coming.